Good morning, friends and neighbors. It's Stuart Payne from Read 20 in the Readmobile. I'm at North Chickamauga Creek Greenway, and I got a new book to share. This story is called Hugo and the Impossible Thing. What does it mean if something is impossible? Can't do it, right? Well, Hugo wonders if anybody's ever tried. This is a wonderful story about teamwork and what we can do if we put our minds to it and we're willing to work together. By Renee Smith, with illustrations by Sydney Hansen, and it starts this way. At the edge of the forest stood the impossible thing. It was a jumbled mess of giant boulders, thorny mazes, raging rivers, and towering cliffs. The animals in the forest often wondered what was beyond the impossible thing. But no one knew, because getting through it would be impossible. And because everyone said it was impossible, no animal ever tried. Until one day, a curious little dog named Hugo sat near the edge of the impossible thing, and he thought to himself, how do we know the impossible thing is impossible if no one's ever tried to get through it? Good question, right? On his way home, Hugo visited his friend Mr. Bear, who was lumbering around in his cave. Hey, Mr. Bear, said Hugo, do you think I can make it through the impossible thing? Well, of course not, Bear answered. If anyone could make it through the impossible thing, it would be someone big and strong like me. Well, have you ever tried? Hugo asked. Well, no, admitted the bear, because the impossible thing is impossible. Oh, I see. Well, you know what? Tomorrow I think I'm going to try. So Hugo visited Little Fox, who was pondering in her den. Pondering. Hey, Little Fox, do you think I can make it through the impossible thing? No way, she scoffed. If anyone could make it through the impossible thing, it would be somebody quick and clever like me, though. Well, have you ever tried? Hugo asked. Not a chance, said Little Fox, because I'm clever enough to know impossible things are impossible. Oh, I see. Well, tomorrow I think I'm going to try. Next, Hugo visited Miss Otter, who was bathing in her pond. Hey, Miss Otter, said Hugo, do you think I can make it through the impossible thing? I'm sorry, no, said Miss Otter. But if anyone could make it through the impossible thing, it would be a really skilled swimmer like me. Have you ever tried? Hugo asked. Well, of course not. It's just like they say, impossible? Oh, I see. Well, tomorrow I think I'm going to try. And then Hugo went to visit old Mr. Goat, who was balancing on a branch way up in his tree. Hello up there, Mr. Goat, said Hugo. Do you think I can make it through the impossible thing? Definitely not, said Mr. Goat. But if anyone could make it through the impossible thing, it'd be an expert climber like me. Well, have you ever tried it? Hugo asked. Why would I? said Mr. Goat. I've lived in this forest longer than anyone. And the impossible thing has always been impossible. Well, that's what I've heard, Hugo says. But tomorrow I think I'm going to try. And as curious little Hugo began to fall asleep, he thought to himself, everybody keeps telling me the impossible thing is impossible, but no one has ever tried to make it through the impossible thing. And even though I'm not as big and strong as Mr. Bear, or as quick and clever as Little Fox, and I can't swim like Miss Otter, or climb like old Mr. Goat, but I still feel like I have to try. And so Hugo drifted off to sleep and dreamt of the impossible thing and what might lie beyond it. and he dreamed of being the first in the forest to get through it. Gotta have a dream, right? The next morning, Hugo stopped by old Mr. Goat's tree, but he wasn't there. He passed Miss Otter's pond, but she wasn't there. Little Fox was not in her den, and Mr. Bear wasn't in his cave. And when Hugo finally arrived at the edge of the forest, he was very surprised when he found Mr. Bear, Little Fox, Miss Otter, and old Mr. Goat waiting for him. In all the years I've lived in the forest, explained Mr. Bear, everyone has always said that getting through the impossible thing was impossible. Yeah, that's right, said Little Fox. So nobody ever thought to try. Well, until you, said Miss Otter. And if you really want to try, said Mr. Goat, we're going to help you, Mr. Bear assured him. Hugo looked to his friends and he smiled. Let's try to make it through the impossible thing together, he said. And wouldn't you know it, with the help of big, strong Mr. Bear, Hugo and his friends moved the giant boulders. With the help of quick and clever Little Fox, Hugo and his friends found their way through the tricky, thorny maze. And with the help of sweet Miss Otter, Hugo and his friends swam all the way across the raging rivers. And with the help of grumpy old Mr. Goat, Hugo and his friends climbed all the way up the towering cliffs. And when old Mr. Goat nudged Hugo up to the very top of the tallest cliff, well, Hugo became the first in the forest ever to make it through the impossible thing. Way to go, Hugo. And there, just beyond the peak of the impossible thing, was the most perfect place in all the forest. The sun was warmer, and the shade was cooler. The berries were sweeter, and the grass was greener. Hugo, Mr. Bear, Little Fox, Miss Otter, and old Mr. Goat spent the rest of the day there and many days after. And from that day on, thanks to curious little Hugo and his most supportive friends, the impossible thing became known as the extremely difficult but absolutely positively possible thing. Funny how that works. Have you ever done anything that somebody told you that you couldn't do? Did that just make you want to do it a little bit more when they said that you couldn't do it? All right, thanks for tuning in.